There are things history records because they were common, and there are things history records because they were so singular, so deliberately extreme, so carefully designed to be unforgettable, that the people who witnessed them could not stop writing about them even centuries later. The blood eagle is the second kind of thing. The year is 867, Northumbria, England. A Norse army has just captured Ella of Northumbria, the Anglo-Saxon king responsible for the death of the legendary Viking king Ragnar Lothbrok. Ragnar had been thrown into a pit of snakes by Ella. He had died slowly, publicly, humiliated. And his sons, Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan, Ubbe, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, had crossed the North Sea with an army not to raid England, to answer for their father. What happened next is recorded in multiple independent sources: the Norse sagas, Anglo-Saxon chronicles, later medieval accounts. What happened next is the blood eagle, and the question that historians spent 200 years arguing about, the question that tore the academic study of Viking Age violence into factions: was it real? The answer, when it finally came, was not what anyone expected. And it tells you something about the Viking Age that no battle account, no raid record, no saga of conquest ever quite manages to communicate. Something about what the Norse believed happened after death. Something about what they believed a king's death required. Something about the line between violence and ritual in a world where those two things were never fully separate. Before we talk about what the blood eagle was, you need to understand the world that produced it. Because the blood eagle did not emerge from pure savagery, it emerged from theology. The Norse understanding of death was fundamentally different from the Christian framework that surrounds most of the written records we have. In Christian theology, death is a transition. The body dies. The soul continues. The body is temporary, almost incidental. In Norse theology, the relationship between the body and what follows death was far more complex, far more physical, far more present. The Norse afterlife was not one place, it was several. Valhalla, the Hall of Odin, where warriors who died in battle were carried. Here, the honored dead fought each day, feasted each night, and prepared for Ragnarok, the final battle at the end of the world. Entry to Valhalla was not guaranteed. It was earned, through the manner of death. Folkvanger, the field of Freya, where a different portion of the battle dead went. Also honorable, also earned. Hell, the realm of those who died of illness, old age, or in ways that did not qualify as battle deaths. Not a punishment, simply a continuation, gray, diminished, separated from the glory of Valhalla. But a continuation. And Nastrand, the shore of the dead, reserved for murderers, oath-breakers, and those whose crimes in life had been of a specific type. In this framework, the manner of death mattered enormously. A warrior who died in battle with a weapon in his hand died correctly. His death was a sacrifice, blood spilled, life given, that fulfilled a cosmic requirement and opened the path to Valhalla. A king who was executed, killed not in battle but as a captive, helpless, without weapon, had his path to Valhalla complicated. Unless the execution itself was a ritual, unless the manner of death transformed what would otherwise be a shameful ending into sacrifice, something that sent the victim to Odin, not as a warrior, as an offering. The blood eagle appears in three primary sources in the Norse sagas: the execution of Ella of Northumbria by the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, recorded in the Ragnarssona Thatr; the execution of King Halfdan by Eyvind, the plagiarist's account in Hakonarmal; the execution of King Maelgwalai of Munster, referenced in Irish annals that cross-reference Norse sources. In each account, the method is described with enough consistency that historians cannot dismiss the similarities as coincidence. The victim is restrained face down. The ribs are cut from the spine. The lungs are pulled out through the opening in the back and spread to either side. The resulting shape, the spread lungs, the opened rib cage, resembles wings, an eagle, a blood eagle. For most of the 20th century, the academic consensus was that this could not have been conducted on a living person. Cutting the ribs from the spine while alive would produce immediate shock and death before the procedure could be completed. Therefore, the scholars argued. The blood eagle was performed post-mortem, a ritual conducted on a body already dead. Grim, deliberate, symbolically potent, but not the live torture the sagas seem to describe. And then, in 2017, a forensic pathologist named Luke John Murphy published a paper that the academic community did not see coming. Luke John Murphy is a researcher at the University of Iceland. His 2017 paper, published in the journal Speculum, one of the oldest and most respected medieval studies journals in the world, approached the blood eagle question not as a historian, but as a forensic scientist. He asked a different question than everyone before him. Not, could the blood eagle have been performed as described, but what would it actually take, anatomically, to perform it as described? And is that outside the range of what Viking Age executioners, with their specific knowledge and tools, could have achieved? His conclusions changed the debate. The procedure, Murphy argued, was not anatomically impossible for a trained practitioner with the right tools. Viking Age Norse warriors had extensive practical knowledge of human anatomy, not from medical training, from combat, from the experience of inflicting and treating wounds, from the butchering of large animals, which requires the same basic understanding of body structure. A skilled practitioner who knew what they were doing could, Murphy argued, conduct the initial stages of the blood eagle, the opening of the back, the separation of the ribs from the spine, in a manner that did not immediately kill the victim. The human body, under extreme stress, does not always respond the way medical theory predicts it should. There are documented cases in modern forensic literature of individuals surviving injuries that theory would classify as immediately fatal, not for long, but long enough for consciousness to be maintained through procedures that should have ended it. Murphy did not argue that the blood eagle was comfortable or that victims survived it for long. He argued that it was possible, that the saga's implication of a living victim at the beginning of the procedure was not anatomically impossible. And he argued something else, something about the ravens. In Norse cosmology, ravens are Odin's birds. Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, the two ravens that fly across the world each day and return to Odin's shoulders. Ravens follow armies. Ravens follow battlefields. Ravens appear wherever large amounts of fresh meat become available. The Norse noticed this, and in the blood eagle, with its deliberate opening of the body, the exposure of the organs, the creation of a form that resembled wings, the researchers now see something beyond torture. They see an invocation. The blood eagle was not just an execution, it was a summoning, an opening of the human body in a form that called Odin's birds, that created from a living person the shape of the god's own symbol, that transformed a king's death into a sacrifice, into a gift to Odin. The victim did not just die. The victim was sent in the most deliberate, theologically specific manner. And the ravens came, as they always did, as they always do wherever blood is spilled in sufficient quantity. But in the Norse framework, the arrival of the ravens was not coincidence. It was confirmation. The offering had been received. Here is the part of this story that the academic debate almost never reaches. Because the academic debate focuses on whether the blood eagle was real, whether it happened, whether it was performed as described, whether the sagas are reliable, whether the forensic analysis holds up. All of that matters, but it is not the most disturbing thing about the blood eagle. The most disturbing thing is this. Ella of Northumbria, if the sagas are accurate, knew what was coming. The sons of Ragnar did not conduct the blood eagle in secret. They did not ambush Ella and perform it before he could comprehend. According to the Ragnarssona Tatter, Ella was captured, brought before Ivar the Boneless and his brothers. And Ivar, the most calculating, the most strategically intelligent, the most coldly deliberate of Ragnar's sons, told him what was going to happen. He told him why. He told him that this was the answer to Ragnar's death, that this was what his crime required, that this was not revenge in the simple sense, not anger, not grief, not the hot violence of men who have lost something they loved. This was justice, Norse justice, cosmic justice, The kind of justice that the universe required when a king killed a king in the wrong way. And then it was done. And the sagas record that the Norse warriors who witnessed it, men who had seen violence, stood in silence afterward. Not in celebration, in silence. Because what they had witnessed was not quite violence, not quite war. Not quite anything that fit comfortably inside the categories of things that warriors did to each other. It was something older, something that belonged to a framework of cosmic obligation that even the men performing it understood only partially. They had done what the situation required, what Odin required, what Ragnar's death required, and now it was done. And none of them afterward spoke of it the way men speak of victories. They spoke of it as things that needed to happen, whether they wanted them to or not. Here is the darkest layer. The blood eagle, if we accept the forensic analysis and saga accounts, was not common. It appears 3 times in the historical record. 3. In 300 years of Norse history, 300 years of raids and the full brutal catalog of what medieval warfare produced. 3 times, which means it was reserved, saved, for the specific circumstances that in Norse theology required it. Not every enemy king, not every defeated leader, only the ones whose deaths required a specific answer, only the ones whose crimes against Norse honor were of a specific type, only the ones who needed to be sent, not killed, sent. That distinction between killing and sending is the thing that separates the blood eagle from ordinary Viking violence. And it is the thing that makes it, 1,000 years later, still impossible to look at directly, because it suggests that the men who performed it were not, in their own framework, being cruel. They were being precise. In the summer of 867, after Ella of Northumbria was dead, Ivar the Boneless did something that the sagas record almost as an afterthought. He stayed, while his brothers took the Norse army and continued the campaign, the great heathen army, the largest Norse invasion force England had ever seen. Sweeping across Northumbria and East Anglia and Mercia, Ivar stayed in Northumbria. He negotiated, he built alliances, he established trade networks. He became, in the years that followed, not a conqueror in the Viking tradition of raid and retreat, but something more complex, a political presence, a power in the English landscape, a man who had come to answer for his father's death, and having answered, found reasons to remain. The saga accounts of what Ivar did after the Blood Eagle are fragmentary, contradictory. He appears in Irish sources as a king of Dublin, in English sources as a military commander of significant sophistication, in Norse sources as one of the most formidable strategic minds of the Viking Age. He outlived most of his brothers. He built something, not a legend in the way Ragnar was a legend, not through romantic catastrophe, not through the kind of death that makes great sagas, through the quieter, more durable achievement of staying alive long enough to matter. Ivar the Boneless is remembered primarily for the Blood Eagle, for the execution of Ella, for the answer given to his father's death. But what Ivar actually built, the political structures, the trade networks, the alliances, that is barely in the history books at all. The dramatic violence remembered, the durable work forgotten. Sound familiar? We remember the Blood Eagle. We remember Ragnar and the Snake Pit. We remember the extraordinary violence of the Viking Age because extraordinary violence is what memory preserves. What memory does not preserve, what requires archaeology, is the infrastructure, the trade networks, the legal systems, the agricultural innovations, the navigation techniques, the food preservation that kept communities alive, the construction methods that built homes on impossible ground, the things that actually sustained the Viking Age for 300 years. The Blood Eagle happened 3 times. The barrel of fermented cabbage happened every autumn, for 300 years. History remembers the eagle. The barrel saved more lives. And perhaps that is the final thing the Viking Age asks us to understand. That the most important things are almost never the things that get remembered. They are the quiet things, the practical things, the things done not once dramatically but every day, unremarkably, because they needed to be done. The blood eagle is in the sagas. The barrel is in the ground. Both of them are real. Only one of them kept anyone alive.